the inspiring story of Martin Luther King Jr. Sri Sit English Listening Practice. Learn English through real heroes. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, during a time when racial segregation shaped every aspect of daily life in the American South. At birth, he was named Michael King Jr., but his father, inspired by the Protestant reformer Martin Luther, later changed both of their names. That symbolic change reflected a family deeply connected to faith, moral courage, and the pursuit of justice. Martin grew up on Auburn Avenue, known as Sweet Auburn, a center of black business and culture in Atlanta. His father, Martin Luther King Sr., was a respected Baptist minister who often preached against racial inequality from the pulpit of Ebenezer Baptist Church. His mother, Alberta Williams King, was an educated schoolteacher who filled their home with music, reading, and spiritual reflection. The King household valued education, hard work, and a belief that faith could transform society. Although surrounded by love, young Martin could not escape the harsh reality of racism. At age 6, one of his white playmates suddenly told him they could no longer be friends because their parents forbade it. The reason was skin color. Martin was heartbroken. His parents explained the cruel system known as Jim Crow laws, which enforced racial segregation in schools, buses, restaurants, and public facilities. That experience planted an early seed of awareness. The world was unjust, but injustice did not have to be permanent. From an early age, Martin displayed unusual intelligence and curiosity. He skipped the 9th and 12th grades, entering Morehouse College, the same school his father and grandfather had attended, at just 15. At Morehouse, the young student encountered new ideas about morality, philosophy, and social change. He read Plato, Aristotle, and the sermons of theologian Reinhold Niebuhr, and he began to sense that intellect and compassion could work together to heal society's wounds. College President Benjamin E. Mays, himself a powerful voice for civil rights, became a lifelong mentor and urged students to see life as service. When Martin first entered college, ministry was not his plan. He imagined becoming a doctor or lawyer. Yet as he listened to his father's sermons and to Dr. Mays's speeches about spiritual leadership, he began to feel a quiet but persistent calling. He realized that the church could be not only a place of worship, but also a platform for justice. By the time he graduated in 1948 with a degree in sociology, he had decided to become a minister who would speak to the moral conscience of the nation. After Morehouse, King studied at Crozer Theological Seminary in Pennsylvania. There, for the first time, he lived in an integrated community where white and black students studied together. So he sometimes faced prejudice, such as being refused service at restaurants. At Crozer, he learned about the life and philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi, whose movement for Indian independence was based on non-violent resistance. King was captivated by Gandhi's belief that peaceful protest could awaken the oppressor's conscience. He began to imagine applying similar methods to confront racial injustice in America. King's classmates respected his calm confidence and moral seriousness. He was elected student body president and graduated at the top of his class in 1951. That same year, he entered Boston University to pursue a doctorate in systematic theology. Boston exposed him to a broader world, diverse cultures, ideas, and social freedoms uncommon in the segregated South. There he met Coretta Scott, a gifted singer and intellectual from Alabama who shared his passion for equality and education. Their partnership became both romantic and revolutionary. They married in 1953 and would eventually have 4 children: Yolanda, Martin III, Dexter, and Bernice. While completing his doctoral studies, King worked on developing a philosophy that combined Christian ethics with social responsibility. He wrote that love was not a sentimental emotion, but a moral power that could transform enemies into friends. This idea would later define his entire movement. He earned his PhD in 1955, becoming Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at only 26 years old. Despite his growing academic success, King never lost touch with the realities of racial discrimination. During visits home to Atlanta, he still had to sit in the colored section of trains and buses. He witnessed how poverty and violence shaped black life in the South. These contradictions between his education and his lived experience strengthened his determination to change the system peacefully but firmly. In 1954, King accepted a position as pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. The congregation was small but energetic, and the city was simmering with frustration over segregation on public buses. King had no idea that within a year, Montgomery would become the flashpoint for a movement that would transform American society, and that he would be at its center. At this point, the young minister's life story had already woven together all the threads that would later define him: deep faith, rigorous education, courage in the face of injustice, and an unshakable belief in the moral power of non-violence. The boy who once lost a friend because of race was about to become the man who taught a nation that love is stronger than hate. In the spring of 1954, a 25-year-old Martin Luther King Jr. accepted his first full-time post as pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. The small red brick church stood just a few blocks from the state capitol, a symbol of political power that enforced racial segregation throughout the South. King arrived with energy, intellect, and a calm but fiery sense of purpose. He believed that his ministry should not only save souls but also serve society. Montgomery in the 1950s was a city divided by Jim Crow laws. Black citizens made up more than half of the population, yet they could not vote freely, attend white schools, or sit in the front of public buses. Buses, in particular, had become an everyday symbol of humiliation. The first 10 seats were reserved for white passengers. Black passengers were forced to sit in the back or stand even when seats remained empty. For years, the black community had quietly protested this injustice, but little changed. Then, on December 1st, 1955, something remarkable happened that would shake the city and the entire nation. That afternoon, a 42-year-old seamstress named Rosa Parks boarded a Montgomery bus after finishing her work at a local department store. She sat in the first row of the section designated for black passengers. As the bus filled, white passengers boarded, and the driver ordered Parks and 3 others to stand so that white passengers could sit. The others obeyed. Parks refused. She simply said, "No." Her quiet defiance led to her arrest for violating segregation laws. Word of her courage spread quickly through the black community. Local leaders from the Montgomery Improvement Association, MIA, gathered to discuss a response. Among them was E.D. Nixon, a longtime activist, and several ministers, including the young Martin Luther King Jr. Because of his reputation for integrity and eloquence, King was chosen to lead the movement. That evening, he reluctantly agreed. "If we are wrong," he told them, "then justice is a lie." The next morning, the city awoke to an extraordinary sight: empty buses. On December 5, 1955, the Montgomery bus boycott began. Tens of thousands of black residents refused to ride the buses, walking miles to work, school, and church. Some shared car rides, others organized community carpools. King's Church became the meeting ground where volunteers coordinated routes and drivers. Despite police harassment, people persevered. That night, more than 5,000 supporters packed Holt Street Baptist Church to hear their new leader speak. Standing before the crowd, King's voice was steady but passionate. There comes a time when people get tired of being trampled by the iron feet of oppression. We are not wrong in what we are doing. If we are wrong, the Supreme Court is wrong. If we are wrong, the Bible is wrong. If we are wrong, God Almighty is wrong. The crowd erupted in applause. Many described the speech as electric, a moment when fear turned into faith. King urged everyone to maintain discipline and nonviolence. We must meet hate with love. That single idea, love as a weapon stronger than hate, became the moral foundation of the entire civil rights movement. The boycott quickly drew national attention. Newspapers across America published photographs of Montgomery's empty buses and long lines of people walking in the rain. Some white citizens were outraged. King's home was bombed while his wife and baby daughter were inside. Miraculously, they were unharmed. That night, as neighbors gathered outside ready to retaliate, King stood on his porch and pleaded with them, "Don't strike back, love your enemies, do not become what we despise." His words calmed the crowd. Reporters later wrote that this moment transformed King from a local pastor into a national moral voice. The city fought back with arrests and intimidation. Police ticketed carpool drivers for trivial violations. King himself was arrested in January 1956 for driving 30 miles per hour in a 25-mile zone, a clear act of harassment. During his brief time in jail, he prayed and reflected on the meaning of sacrifice. He realized that freedom always carries a price, and he was willing to pay it. Despite threats and fatigue, the movement endured for 381 days. Churches became transportation centers, volunteers repaired tires and engines, women cooked meals for walkers. The boycott's strength came from ordinary people who refused to give up. A domestic worker named Georgia Gilmore sold cakes to raise money for gas. An elderly woman walked 12 miles every day, saying, "My feet are tired, but my soul is rested." Finally, on November 13, 1956, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that segregation on public buses was unconstitutional. On December 21st, after a full year of resistance, Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks rode together on an integrated bus. The long walk to freedom had taken its first successful step. The Montgomery bus boycott became a blueprint for peaceful protest. It proved that disciplined nonviolent resistance could challenge deeply rooted injustice without bloodshed. It also revealed King's extraordinary leadership, his ability to speak with reason and compassion, to unite diverse groups, and to turn personal suffering into collective strength. But success brought new responsibilities. Reporters sought interviews, churches invited him to speak, enemies issued death threats. King's phone rang day and night, some calls filled with praise, others with hate. One night, exhausted and afraid, he bowed his head over a cup of coffee and whispered a prayer. "Lord, I am down here trying to do what is right, but I am weak. I am losing courage." He later wrote that he felt God's presence whisper back, "Stand up for righteousness. Stand up for truth. I will be with you." That moment renewed his strength. King realized his mission was larger than Montgomery. He envisioned a nationwide movement where nonviolence would be both a strategy and a moral way of life. By 1957, the success of the boycott led to the creation of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, with King as its first president. Its purpose? To coordinate civil rights actions across the South. From that platform, King began traveling from city to city, preaching the gospel of love and justice. The Montgomery victory did not end segregation, but it cracked its foundations. More importantly, It awakened millions of Americans, black and white alike, to the possibility of peaceful change. The young preacher from Georgia had become the moral compass of a generation. He had discovered the power of organized faith, disciplined courage, and the relentless pursuit of justice through peace. When asked years later what gave him the courage to lead, King replied simply, "I just tried to do God's will." By the early 1960s, Martin Luther King Jr. had become the most recognized voice of the civil rights movement in America. The Montgomery bus boycott had made him a national figure, but King knew the struggle for justice was far from over. Across the southern United States, racial segregation and discrimination were still enforced by local laws and violent traditions. Black Americans continued to be denied the right to vote, attend equal schools, or enjoy public facilities on the same terms as white citizens. After Montgomery, King and other civil rights leaders established the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC. Its mission was to organize nonviolent protests across the South. Rather than acting alone, King believed the movement needed to be strategic, coordinated, and deeply rooted in Christian principles. His message was simple but revolutionary. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. The road to Birmingham. In 1963, the SCLC turned its attention to Birmingham, Alabama, one of the most racially divided cities in the United States. Birmingham's police chief, Eugene Bull Connor, was notorious for his brutal treatment of black citizens. Segregation was strictly enforced in restaurants, schools, public parks, and even drinking fountains. For years, local activists had tried and failed to make progress. King believed Birmingham could be the turning point. The SCLC partnered with local leaders, including Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, to launch what became known as the Birmingham Campaign. The plan was to apply direct action, peaceful marches, sit-ins, and economic boycotts to pressure city officials into negotiating civil rights reforms. On April 3, 1963, the campaign began. Protesters marched peacefully through downtown Birmingham, demanding an end to segregation. They sat in whites-only areas at lunch counters and picketed outside businesses that refused to hire black workers. Police arrested hundreds. Among them were ministers, students, and even elderly women. King himself joined a march on April 12th and was arrested for violating a court injunction that banned all protests. He was taken to Birmingham City Jail, where he spent 8 days in solitary confinement. Letter from Birmingham Jail. While in jail, King received a newspaper containing a letter written by 8 white clergymen who criticized the protests as unwise and untimely. They urged black citizens to be patient and allow change to happen through the courts, not the streets. King was deeply disappointed by their words. From his tiny cell, using scraps of paper and the margins of the newspaper, he began to write a response. That response became one of the most important documents of the civil rights era, the letter from Birmingham Jail. In the letter, King defended the necessity of non-violent direct action. We know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. He explained that waiting patiently had only prolonged injustice, and that justice too long delayed is justice denied. He urged white moderates not to remain silent, and reminded religious leaders of their moral duty to speak out. In the midst of a mighty struggle to rid our nation of racial and economic injustice, I must confess that I am gravely disappointed with the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice. His words were not angry. They were measured, logical, and morally powerful. The letter circulated across the country, published in newspapers and shared in churches. It became a call to conscience, especially for white Americans who had previously ignored or misunderstood the movement. The Children's Crusade. After King was released from jail, the Birmingham campaign escalated. On May 2, 1963, in a bold and controversial decision, SCLC leaders organized a youth protest known as the Children's Crusade. Hundreds of school children, some as young as 6 years old, marched through the streets, singing freedom songs and demanding change. The police responded with violence. Under Bull Connor's orders, firemen blasted children with high-pressure water hoses. Police dogs were released. Children were dragged into police vans and sent to jail by the hundreds. The horrifying images were captured by photographers and broadcast across the nation. Americans were shocked. Many had not realized how brutal the resistance to civil rights had become. King and his allies had always known that media exposure would play a crucial role in changing public opinion. These images met scenes of innocent children being attacked while peacefully marching forced the country to confront its own conscience. Even President John F. Kennedy could not ignore what was happening. Within weeks, city officials agreed to begin desegregation in Birmingham. Black citizens would be allowed access to public facilities, and discriminatory hiring practices would begin to change. The Birmingham campaign had won a symbolic and strategic victory, and the movement grew stronger. From Birmingham to the nation, King now realized that the movement needed to take its message beyond the South. The next logical step was a national demonstration, one that would gather people from all races, regions, and religions to speak with one voice for equality. That plan became the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, scheduled for August 28, 1963. It would become one of the largest political rallies in American history. But before the march, King faced personal trials. His leadership was often criticized. Some activists believed his approach was too cautious, while others felt it was too aggressive. He received death threats daily. His family needed constant protection. Still, he pressed forward. By the summer of 1963, the civil rights movement had reached a decisive moment. In cities across the American South, peaceful protests had drawn attention to racial injustice, police brutality, and economic inequality. Martin Luther King Jr. and his fellow leaders from the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, had helped organize nonviolent campaigns in Montgomery, Birmingham, and other cities. Now it was time to take the movement to the national stage, to the very center of political power. Washington, D.C., the goal was bold: to organize a massive gathering that would demonstrate national support for civil rights legislation and economic justice. Civil rights leaders believed that showing unity, strength, and dignity in the nation's capital could push Congress and the president to act. Thus, the idea for the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom was born. The March on Washington was a collaborative effort among several civil rights organizations, including SCLC, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, led by King NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, led by Roy Wilkins, SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, led by John Lewis Core, Congress of Racial Equality, led by James Farmer National Urban League, led by Whitney Young, These groups had different strategies and ideologies, but they shared a common goal: to demand civil and economic rights for African Americans. The march was scheduled for August 28, 1963. Planning the march, organizing a demonstration of this size, was a huge challenge. Leaders worried about violence, transportation issues, and whether people would actually show up. They had less than 2 months to prepare. King and his team worked with Bayard Rustin, an experienced activist and organizer. Rustin coordinated the logistics, arranging buses, permits, food, sound systems, and volunteers. More than 250,000 people were expected to attend, including black and white Americans, union workers, students, clergy, and celebrities. Their message was clear and simple. We demand the passage of meaningful civil rights legislation. We demand an end to police brutality. We demand equal access to public education. We demand decent housing. We demand jobs and freedom. Now, as the date approached, people from across the country prepared to travel to Washington. Many had never left their home states before. Some churches raised funds to rent buses. Families packed meals for the long journey. People were not just attending a protest, they were becoming part of history. The day of the march. On the morning of August 28, 1963, tens of thousands of people flooded the streets of Washington, D.C. The weather was warm and sunny. Demonstrators carried signs with messages like, "Jobs not jail," "We shall overcome," and "End segregation now." There was a sense of excitement, hope, and unity in the air. People gathered in front of the Lincoln Memorial, the iconic monument to the president who had signed the Emancipation Proclamation 100 years earlier. The choice of this location was symbolic. It linked the struggle for civil rights in 1963 to the promise of freedom made in 1863. The crowd included students, laborers, ministers, nuns, veterans, and artists. Celebrities like Harry Belafonte, Joan Baez, Bob Dylan, and Mahalia Jackson performed or attended. Reporters and photographers from around the world covered the event live. The program included musical performances, prayers, and speeches from civil rights leaders. One of the most powerful came from John Lewis, a 23-year-old leader of SNCC, who passionately criticized the federal government's inaction. But the most anticipated moment came at the end of the program, the speech by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. "I have a dream." As King stepped to the podium, the crowd fell silent. Standing in front of the towering statue of Lincoln, King began with a prepared speech. But as he spoke, gospel singer Mahalia Jackson, standing nearby, called out to him, "Tell them about the dream, Martin." Inspired, King shifted away from his script and began to speak from the heart. The next words he delivered became some of the most iconic in human history. "I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." The crowd responded with cheers, tears, and applause. His voice rose with conviction as he painted a picture of a future without racism, a future where children would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. He imagined former slaves and slave owners sitting together at the table of brotherhood. He called for mountains of despair to become stones of hope, and he concluded with words that echoed like a national prayer. When we let freedom ring, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing, "Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last." The speech lasted about 17 minutes. Its impact has lasted decades. The impact of the march. The March on Washington was a resounding success. More than 250,000 people attended peacefully, one of the largest political rallies in U.S. history. It showed the power of unity, the strength of nonviolence, and the importance of moral leadership. King's speech became a symbol of hope, progress, and patriotism. Television networks replayed it. Newspapers published it. School children memorized it. It moved not only black Americans, but millions of others across the country who had remained silent. Now they were inspired to speak. 1 year later, in 1964, Congress passed the Civil Rights Act, which outlawed segregation in public places and banned employment discrimination. In 1965, the Voting Rights Act followed, giving black citizens the full right to vote. The March on Washington was not the end of the struggle. There were still years of protests, violence, and sacrifice ahead, but it was a turning point. A moment when the nation saw what dignity, courage, and unity looked like. Dr. King had shown the world that words could be weapons of peace. His dream became a shared vision for generations to come. Following the triumph of the March on Washington in August 1963 and Martin Luther King Jr.'s iconic "I Have a Dream" speech, the civil rights movement stood at its most visible and hopeful moment. The nation had witnessed the power of nonviolent protest and had seen a peaceful interracial crowd demand justice in the shadow of the Lincoln Memorial. But the road ahead would be more difficult. While millions were inspired, others were enraged. Local officials, white supremacists, and even some politicians began pushing back. For King and the movement, the years that followed were filled with struggles, sacrifices, and painful setbacks. But they also revealed the depth of King's strength and moral leadership. A season of violence. Just 18 days after the March on Washington, tragedy struck. On September 15, 1963, a bomb exploded at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. The church was a central meeting place for civil rights activists. The bomb, planted by white supremacists, killed 4 young black girls: Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Wesley. The attack shocked the nation. Images of the girls' funeral were broadcast across the country. Martin Luther King Jr., who had led the Birmingham campaign just months earlier, delivered the eulogy. His voice trembled with emotion as he said, "These children, unoffending, innocent, and beautiful, were the victims of one of the most vicious and tragic crimes ever committed against humanity." He called for forgiveness, not revenge. But his grief ran deep. The bombing reminded King and the world that hatred was still powerful and deadly. Political pushback and surveillance. While King was celebrated by many, not everyone saw him as a hero. Inside the U.S. government, some officials feared the growing influence of the civil rights movement. J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, was particularly hostile toward King. Hoover believed King might be a communist sympathizer and began a secret campaign to undermine him. The FBI wiretapped King's phones, followed his travels, and tried to gather damaging information. They even sent him an anonymous letter attempting to blackmail him into silence. King knew he was being watched, but he refused to be intimidated. "If I am stopped, this movement will not stop," he once said, "because God is with this movement." This period tested not just his public strength, but also his private resilience. He was often exhausted, isolated, and under immense pressure. Still, he moved forward. Selma and the fight for voting rights. After the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed, banning segregation in public spaces, many people believed the struggle was over. But King knew that voting rights remained the missing piece of the puzzle. In the South, black citizens still faced impossible literacy tests, poll taxes, and threats if they tried to vote. To address this, King and the SCLC began organizing a campaign in Selma, Alabama, in early 1965. Selma was chosen because its white officials had a long record of blocking black voter registration. King worked alongside John Lewis, James Bevel, and local activists to organize peaceful marches demanding the right to vote. The most famous march took place on March 7, 1965, a day now known as Bloody Sunday. Around 600 peaceful protesters attempted to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge. As they reached the top, they were met by a wall of state troopers and local police, armed with clubs and tear gas. The marchers were beaten, trampled, and chased back. Among them was John Lewis, who suffered a fractured skull. The horrifying footage of the violence was broadcast nationwide, shocking Americans and prompting a wave of outrage. King responded by calling for another march, this time with national support. On March 23rd, over 25,000 people, black and white, young and old, religious and secular, joined him in a 5-day march from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama. The march was a turning point. 5 months later, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act of 1965, outlawing discriminatory voting practices. It was one of the greatest victories of the movement. But it had come at a terrible cost. Inner struggles and growing criticism. While King was praised for his moral clarity, not everyone in the movement agreed with his methods. By the late 1960s, a new generation of activists, influenced by Malcolm X and the rise of Black Power, began to question whether nonviolence was still effective. They were frustrated by the slow pace of change and the continued violence against black communities. King respected these new voices but remained committed to nonviolence, believing that hate could never drive out hate. At the same time, he began to expand his message to include poverty, labor rights, and anti-war activism. He criticized the Vietnam War, saying, "The bombs in Vietnam explode at home. They destroy the hopes and possibilities for a decent America." This stand lost him support among some former allies, including politicians and even the mainstream media. Donations to the SCLC declined. Some churches distanced themselves, but King refused to compromise his principles. "A time comes when silence is betrayal," he said. "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." The Poor People's Campaign. By 1967, King was preparing what he believed could be the movement's most ambitious effort, the Poor People's Campaign. The campaign aimed to bring Black, white, Latino, and Native American people together to demand economic justice, fair housing, jobs, health care, and education for the poor across America. King planned a massive encampment in Washington, D.C., where the poor would gather peacefully to demand federal action. He called it a revolution of values. The campaign's message was clear. Civil rights without economic justice was not enough. But this new vision brought new enemies. Critics accused King of turning the movement into a socialist project. His supporters were divided, yet King pressed forward. In early 1968, he traveled to Memphis, Tennessee, to support a strike by black sanitation workers demanding fair wages and dignity. He saw their cause as a symbol of the larger economic struggle, a final sacrifice. On April 3, 1968, King delivered what would become his final speech at the Mason Temple in Memphis. It was a stormy night, and King arrived late, tired and unwell, yet his voice carried power and prophecy. "I've been to the mountain top, and I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land." The next evening, on April 4, 1968, as he stood on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel, King was assassinated by a sniper. He was just 39 years old. News of his death triggered riots in over 100 cities. Millions wept. The nation mourned the loss of a man who had become not only a leader, but a moral symbol of hope. Yet even in death, his message lived on. His legacy inspired generations to fight for justice, peace, and equality. The March on Washington in 1963 marked a turning point in American history. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech, "I Have a Dream," had echoed across the National Mall and into the hearts of millions. It was a moment of triumph, unity, and profound moral clarity. But behind the scenes, King knew that such moments were not the end of a journey, they were only beginnings, and the path ahead would be filled with pain, resistance, and sacrifice. Within just weeks of the march's success, the civil rights movement was confronted with raw brutality that shattered the nation's fragile hope. On September 15, 1963, a bomb exploded at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. The church was a known meeting place for civil rights activists and a spiritual refuge for the local black community. The blast killed 4 young girls, Addie Mae Collins, 14, Denise McNair, 11, Carol Robertson, 14, and Cynthia Wesley, 14, as they were preparing for Sunday service. The attack was carried out by white supremacists, members of the Ku Klux Klan, furious at the momentum of the civil rights movement. The bombing was not just an act of hate, it was a message meant to terrify, silence, and halt the movement's progress. But it did not stop Martin Luther King Jr., though it wounded him deeply. At the memorial service, King delivered a heart-wrenching eulogy for the girls. Standing before the shattered families and a grieving community, his words carried sorrow and spiritual strength. These children, unoffending, innocent, and beautiful, were the victims of one of the most vicious and tragic crimes ever perpetrated against humanity. King's voice trembled with grief, yet he called for forgiveness, not vengeance. He urged the mourners to channel their pain into renewed commitment, not hatred. His message was as unwavering as ever. Non-violence was the only path forward. Still, King knew that the world had changed that day. The civil rights movement had entered a new phase, one marked not just by marches and speeches, but by loss and bloodshed. Government eyes turn inward. While the public face of Martin Luther King Jr. was that of a preacher of peace, behind closed doors, powerful forces were working against him. One of the most significant was J. Edgar Hoover, director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI. Hoover viewed King as a threat, not just politically, but ideologically. The FBI falsely suspected King had ties to communism, and in 1963, They began a covert surveillance operation. His phones were wiretapped. His hotel rooms were bugged. FBI agents tracked his movements and collected private information in an attempt to discredit him both personally and publicly. In one chilling move, the FBI even sent King an anonymous letter accompanied by damaging recordings trying to pressure him into resignation, or worse. The letter suggested that King was a hypocrite and that he should take his own life before he was exposed. King shared the letter with close aides and chose to stand his ground. Despite the fear, humiliation, and emotional weight, he refused to abandon his mission. "If I am stopped, this movement will not stop," he declared. "If I fall, others will rise." This relentless pressure took a toll on his physical and mental health. He was often fatigued. He struggled with depression. He missed his children's milestones. But even in the face of state surveillance and targeted attacks, he continued to speak, travel, organize, and inspire. Selma and the right to vote. By 1965, King had turned his attention to one of the greatest remaining injustices in America, voter suppression. Although the Civil Rights Act of 1964 had outlawed segregation in public spaces, it had not ensured voting rights. In many southern states, black citizens still faced rigged literacy tests, discriminatory poll taxes, threats, and even violence when trying to register to vote. One of the worst examples was Selma, Alabama. In early 1965, King and the SCLC, along with local leaders like Amelia Boynton, James Bevel, and John Lewis, organized a campaign to highlight this injustice. The strategy: peaceful marches to draw national attention to the suppression of black voters. On March 7, 1965, approximately 600 peaceful demonstrators attempted to march from Selma to Montgomery. As they reached the Edmund Pettus Bridge, they were confronted by heavily armed state troopers and local law enforcement. Without warning, the officers charged. They beat the marchers with clubs, released tear gas, and trampled them with horses. Among the injured was John Lewis, whose skull was fractured. The event was broadcast across the country. Americans watching television that Sunday saw a peaceful protest turned into a violent nightmare. The images of bloodied heads, broken bones, and tearful cries shocked the conscience of the nation. The day became known as Bloody Sunday. By late 1964, Martin Luther King Jr. was not just a leader of the American civil rights movement, he had become a symbol of nonviolent resistance and moral leadership across the world. The victories of the early 1960s, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964, had been hard-won through marches, sit-ins, boycotts, and immense personal sacrifice. King's message had moved beyond black and white, beyond North and South. It had become a universal call to conscience. Then, in October 1964, came a moment that shocked even King himself. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. The youngest peace laureate, at just 35 years old, Martin Luther King Jr. became the youngest person ever to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. The Nobel Committee in Oslo, Norway, recognized him for his non-violent struggle against racial inequality and his unwavering commitment to human dignity. When informed of the award, King said he accepted it with an abiding faith in America and an audacious faith in the future of mankind. He traveled to Norway in December 1964 with his wife, Coretta Scott King, and a small delegation. In his acceptance speech, he made it clear that the award was not a personal honor. It belonged to the movement. "I accept this award on behalf of a civil rights movement, which is moving with determination and a majestic scorn for risk and danger to establish a reign of freedom and a rule of justice. King's speech acknowledged the struggle still ahead. I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. The speech was broadcast around the world. People saw a young black preacher from the American South standing before kings, diplomats, and world leaders, not as a victim of racism, but as a global voice of peace. A shift in focus. Although deeply honored by the Nobel Prize, King returned to the U.S. with the knowledge that his mission was far from complete. Even with the Civil Rights Act passed, daily life for millions of black Americans remained marked by poverty, police brutality, poor housing, and lack of access to education. More and more, King began to broaden the goals of the civil rights movement. His speeches and sermons now began to address not only racism, but economic inequality, class injustice, and international peace. This evolution in his message made some people uncomfortable, even some of his former allies. King began to face growing criticism from both directions. White conservatives who believed he was stirring up trouble, and younger black activists who felt his nonviolent approach was outdated. King welcomed the tension. In fact, he believed it was necessary. There is nothing wrong with tension. We must learn to live with creative tension. Speaking out against war. In 1967, as the Vietnam War escalated, King did something many civil rights leaders had advised against. He publicly condemned the war. In a powerful speech titled Beyond Vietnam, A Time to Break Silence, delivered at Riverside Church in New York City, King called the war a tragic betrayal of American values. He argued that the war disproportionately drafted and killed young black men. The money spent on bombs could have been used to fight poverty. A nation that promotes violence abroad cannot build justice at home. The greatest purveyor of violence in the world today is my own government, he declared. The backlash was swift and severe. Many newspapers condemned the speech. Donors withdrew funding from King's organization. Even some civil rights leaders distanced themselves. But King stood firm. He believed that silence in the face of injustice, any injustice, was a betrayal of his principles. A time comes when silence is betrayal, he said, and that time has come for us. The Poor People's Campaign. Inspired by his deepening concern for economic justice, King spent the final year of his life planning a massive national movement called the Poor People's Campaign. The campaign sought to unite Americans of all backgrounds, black, white, Latino, and Native, around a single demand: an end to poverty. The idea was bold. Thousands of poor people would come to Washington, D.C., set up an encampment, and remain there until the federal government responded with serious policy changes. Their demands included guaranteed employment or income, fair housing, better public education, healthcare access for all a living wage. King described the movement as a revolution of values. He argued that the U.S. needed to shift from being a society focused on things to one centered on people. We must rapidly begin the shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society, he said. Not everyone in his circle supported the idea. Some feared it would be too confrontational. Others worried it would divide the movement. King insisted it was the natural next step. What good is it to sit at an integrated lunch counter if you can't afford a hamburger? Memphis and the final days before the Poor People's Campaign could launch, King was called to Memphis, Tennessee in March 1968. There, black sanitation workers were on strike, demanding better wages and working conditions. Two of their co-workers had been crushed to death by faulty garbage trucks, and city officials refused to recognize the workers' union. King saw their struggle as a perfect symbol of the broader campaign: dignity, labor rights, and economic fairness. On April 3, 1968, King gave a speech at the Mason Temple in Memphis. Though he was tired and sick with a fever, he spoke with renewed passion. He seemed to sense the end was near. "We got some difficult days ahead, he said, "but it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountain top and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land." The next evening, April 4th, 1968, King was shot and killed while standing on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. He was 39 years old. In the spring of 1968, the United States stood at a crossroads. The war in Vietnam raged on. Cities were gripped by poverty, inequality, and unrest. Racial tensions remained high. Many civil rights laws had been passed, but true equality still felt distant for millions of Americans. In this moment of uncertainty and frustration, Martin Luther King Jr. was more than a leader. He was a moral compass, guiding the nation toward justice, peace, and compassion. But King himself was weary. Years of relentless travel, threats, arrests, and internal criticism had taken a toll on him. He often felt isolated. His family worried for his safety. His health suffered. Yet he refused to step back. "I must be faithful to my calling," he said. "The struggle is not over. My place is with the people who suffer." A new battle: economic justice. In the final year of his life, Dr. King began what he believed would be the most important mission of his career: the Poor People's Campaign. He had come to believe that the fight for civil rights could not end with legal equality. It had to extend to economic dignity, the right to housing, healthcare, education, and a living wage. He called poverty a national disgrace. He said that America had enough wealth to eliminate hunger and homelessness, but lacked the moral will. The Poor People's Campaign was not just for Black Americans. It was designed to unite poor white workers, Latino farm workers, Native Americans, and others suffering under the weight of systemic poverty. King envisioned thousands of people gathering in Washington, D.C. in a peaceful encampment to demand real change. He knew it would be risky, and he knew it would be controversial. But he believed it was necessary. True compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar, he preached. It understands that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring. Memphis, the final mission. In March 1968, King traveled to Memphis, Tennessee, to support a strike by black sanitation workers. The workers were underpaid, forced to work in dangerous conditions, and denied the dignity of union recognition. Two workers had recently been crushed to death in a garbage truck, and the city's refusal to improve safety triggered mass outrage. The strikers carried signs that read, "I am a man," a bold demand for recognition of their humanity. King saw the strike as a reflection of the national crisis of poverty and injustice. Though his advisors urged him to focus on the upcoming Poor People's Campaign, King insisted on going to Memphis. He believed that solidarity with working people was central to his cause. His first march in Memphis ended in chaos. Violence broke out when some participants broke from non-violence, and King was devastated. Determined to make things right, he returned on April 3rd to deliver a final message of hope and resilience. "I've been to the mountaintop." That night, Dr. King spoke at the Mason Temple Church of God in Christ. The weather was stormy, and many believed he wouldn't attend. But when he arrived, tired and hoarse, he delivered what many consider his most prophetic speech. He reminded the audience that the road to justice was long, filled with threats and suffering, but that victory was certain if they remained committed to love and non-violence. Then, near the end of the speech, his tone shifted. He spoke as if he foresaw his own death. "Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop, and I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain, and I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land." The audience rose in thunderous applause. Some wept, others prayed. It would be the last speech he ever gave. April 4th, 1968. The assassination. The next evening, April 4th, 1968, Dr. King stood on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, speaking to colleagues below. He was relaxed, joking about dinner plans. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out. A bullet struck King in the jaw and severed his spinal cord. He was rushed to St. Joseph's Hospital, but was pronounced dead an hour later. He was just 39 years old. The nation erupted in grief. In over 100 U.S. cities, riots broke out. Fires burned. People cried in the streets. Others gathered in silence. Churches rang their bells. Schools held memorial services. The country was in mourning, not just for the man, but for what his death represented, a legacy that lives on. Martin Luther King Jr. left behind no fortune, no elected office, no military title. Only words, sacrifice, and a powerful moral vision. Yet his legacy continues to shape laws, inspire leaders, and awaken the conscience of generations. Within days of his death, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Fair Housing Act of 1968, prohibiting discrimination in housing, one of the many causes King had championed. His teachings of non-violence, love in the face of hatred, and justice through peaceful resistance have influenced movements around the world. From South Africa to India, from climate activism to refugee rights. In 1983, President Ronald Reagan signed a law declaring Martin Luther King Jr. Day a national holiday, observed each year on the third Monday in January. Today, King's speeches are taught in schools. His name graces streets, schools, and monuments. His words are quoted by presidents and protesters alike. But more than all that, King's legacy lives in the ongoing struggle for justice, in every person who stands up against hate, in every community that chooses peace over violence, and in every voice that dares to say injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. How to train your mind to speak English. Automatically segment 1. Why automatic speaking matters, and how fluency really works in the brain. Let me ask you a question. When you try to speak English, do you ever feel like you're searching for the words, translating in your head, checking grammar, trying to remember what you studied, all while someone is waiting for your answer? If so, you are not alone. This is what happens to millions of English learners every single day. You've spent months, even years learning English. But when it's time to speak, your mind freezes. You have the words, you know the rules, but they don't come out naturally. You hesitate, you feel frustrated, you say to yourself, why can't I just speak fluently like native speakers? This is the moment when many learners feel stuck, but here's the good news. Fluency is not magic. It's a system, and you can train it. Today, we start learning how to speak English automatically, without stress, without grammar rules, and without translation. You're going to understand what automatic speaking really means, why your brain blocks you from fluency, and how you'll retrain your mind to speak English confidently and naturally. Let's begin. What does automatic speaking mean? Automatic speaking means this. You hear something, you understand it instantly. You respond naturally, Hananu, without building a sentence in your head. No translation, no mental grammar check, no panic, just natural flow. Think about your native language. When someone says, "How are you?" you don't pause to construct a sentence. You simply say, "I'm good," or "not bad," or "tired today," without thinking. It flows. It's natural. That's automatic fluency. The goal of this training series is to bring you closer to that same experience in English, not perfect grammar, not academic vocabulary, but real fluency that works in the real world. Why most people can't speak automatically. The problem is not that you don't know enough English. The problem is that your brain is trying to do too much while you speak. Here's what usually happens. You think of something you want to say, then you translate it into English, then you try to apply the grammar rules, then you search for the right vocabulary, then you build a sentence, then maybe you speak. This is exhausting. And by the time you say something, the moment has already passed. Native speakers don't go through all these steps. They don't build sentences in their head. They don't follow grammar charts. They speak automatically because their brain is trained through repetition, sound, pattern, emotion, and rhythm. That's exactly what you're going to learn to do in this course. How the brain learns language. Let's talk briefly about how your brain actually learns to speak. There are two key systems involved in language. 1. The thinking brain. Slow and analytical. This is where you memorize vocabulary, study grammar rules. Translate from your native language. Write carefully. Take tests. This brain is important, but it's too slow for real-time speaking. 2. The speaking brain. Fast and automatic. This is your pattern. Brain. It uses repetition, sound memory, emotional rhythm, context, and tone. This is how children learn. This is how native speakers speak, and this is the part of your brain we want to train. The goal of this series is to move your English from your thinking brain to your speaking brain. That's how fluency happens. Real fluency versus textbook fluency. Let's compare two students. Student A knows all the grammar rules, can write essays, can pass English tests. Student B makes small grammar mistakes but can hold a conversation, tell stories, react naturally, and speak without hesitation. Which one is fluent? Student B, every time. Fluency is not perfection. Fluency is connection, emotion, rhythm, reaction. The world doesn't care if your grammar is perfect. The world wants to understand you and feel something when you speak. That's your new standard, natural fluency, not perfect grammar. Why you need to stop studying and start speaking. Let's be honest. Studying grammar gives you the feeling of control. It feels safe. It feels productive. You can fill notebooks. You can highlight rules. You can memorize charts, but it doesn't train your speaking brain. That's like reading about swimming, but never getting in the water. To speak fluently, you need real emotional daily contact with the language, not just study. You need speaking out loud, hearing and repeating, feeling the rhythm, reacting in real time, making mistakes and moving on. These are the muscles of fluency. and they need practice. The 3 pillars of automatic fluency. This course is built on 3 pillars. Every technique, every practice, every strategy will connect to these. 1. Repetition. Not boring repetition, smart emotional repetition. You'll train your brain by repeating useful patterns until they become automatic. Example: I'm not sure. I've been meaning to. Let me see. You know what I mean? You'll repeat real phrases, not grammar forms. 2. Real speaking practice. You'll learn to speak alone every day using self-talk, storytelling, voice journaling, and mirror practice. You'll learn how to train without a partner, without fear, and without overthinking. 3. Emotional connection. Fluency is emotional. The phrases you remember most are the ones that mean something to you. That's why this system connects language to your memories, your opinions, your personality, your goals. Because when English feels personal, it becomes natural, what you'll learn in this series. Here's what's coming next in your journey. Segment 2, how to break the habit of translation. Segment 3, how to copy native flow through shadowing and mimicry. Segment 4, how to use repetition and rhythm to build muscle memory. Segment 5, how to speak alone and train internal conversations. Segment 6, how to design your own daily fluency system that sticks. By the end of this course, you will have a complete proven system to train your brain to speak English automatically. Final message for today. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to memorize grammar. You don't need to wait. You already have the ability to speak fluently. It just needs training, not more rules. So from now on, speak more than you study, feel more than you analyze, repeat what works, and let go of what doesn't. This is your path to fluency. And it starts right now. In segment 2, we'll tackle one of the biggest blocks to fluency, translation. You'll learn why your brain still thinks in your language and how to break free for good. See you there. Segment 2. Break the translation habit. Think and respond in English. Welcome to segment 2 of how to train your mind to speak English automatically. In the previous segment, we talked about what automatic fluency means and why your brain gets stuck when it tries to process grammar, translation, and vocabulary all at once. Now we're going to tackle the biggest roadblock between you and real fluency, the habit of translating in your head. If you can break this one habit, your speaking speed will double, your confidence will grow, and English will start to feel natural, not like a puzzle. Let's begin. Why we translate in the first place. Your brain isn't broken. It's just doing what it was trained to do. When you first started learning English, you learned this way. Native language word, English word, repeat. That's how vocabulary lists, flashcards, and classroom drills work. You were rewarded for accuracy, not for speed or emotion. So your brain built a habit. Everything must pass through your native language before it becomes English. That system works fine for writing, reading, or tests, but it fails in real conversation. Why? Because speech happens too fast. By the time your brain translates, chooses a word, and builds a sentence, the moment has already passed. Automatic fluency happens when you skip the translation step entirely. You think and respond directly in English. No middleman. Let's learn how to retrain your brain for that. Step 1. Accept that it's a habit, not a skill problem. The first step is awareness. You're not bad at English. You're just stuck in an old habit. Think of it like driving on the wrong side of the road. At first it's automatic because you've done it for years. When you move to a new country, you have to retrain your reflexes. That's exactly what's happening here. The translation reflex is strong, but like any habit, It can be replaced through consistent small daily training. Step 2. Train your brain to think in images, not words. This is one of the most powerful fluency hacks. When you hear or use an English word, stop connecting it to your native language. Connect it to a picture or a feeling instead. For example, when you say the word coffee, don't think of the translation in your language. Think of the smell, the taste, the cup in your hands. Say the word as you imagine it. Coffee, hot, dark, strong. I need one every morning. Now, the word isn't a translation, it's a direct experience. Try it with other words: rain, music, home, relax, angry. Each one brings an image or emotion. That's how native speakers think, through direct experience, not through language math. Step 3. Self-talk in English. Short and simple. One of the best ways to stop translating is to practice self-talk. Here's how it works. Throughout the day, describe what you're doing in short English sentences. I'm making tea. My phone battery is low. I need to check my email. I'm tired, but I have to finish this. Keep it simple. No grammar perfection, no big vocabulary, just short thoughts directly in English. Do this out loud or silently in your head. Either way, you're training your brain to think in English first. At first, you'll still feel the urge to translate. That's okay, keep going. Over time, the English thoughts will come faster and easier automatically. Step 4. Label your environment. This might sound like a small thing, but it's surprisingly effective. Look around your home or office. Everything you see, and name it in English. Chair, window, pen, notebook, door, light switch. Then add short descriptions. The window is open. The coffee is cold. My phone is on the desk. You're not memorizing vocabulary. You're linking real things to real English. That's how you build the direct connection between life and language. Step 5. Shadow native English. Without subtitles. Shadowing is one of the fastest ways to train automatic response. Here's how to do it for translation-free fluency. Pick a short English video or podcast clip, 1-2 minutes. Listen once. Chomtries, without subtitles. Listen again and repeat every phrase immediately after the speaker. Don't stop to understand every word. Focus on rhythm, tone, and flow. At first, your brain will panic. It wants to translate everything. Ignore it. You're training sound memory, not grammar. This builds direct sound-to-speech connections, the same ones native speakers have. Over time, you'll start understanding English as sound, not as a code to be translated. Step 6. Build your direct English dictionary. Traditional dictionaries teach house, casa, maison, aga house. Instead, create your own dictionary like this. English word, what it feels like, reminds you of home. Warm, comfortable family, my room. Work laptop, meetings, stress, motivation. Rain, cold, grey, peaceful sound. Friend laughing, talking, trust. Freedom. Open sky, calm mind. Every time you add a new word, feel it. Say it aloud. Use it in a small sentence. This method moves your English knowledge from your thinking brain into your emotional automatic brain. Step 7. Use reaction practice. This one is fun. React quickly to everyday statements that are said without overthinking. Pretend someone says, "It's raining again." Say, "Ugh, really?" Or, "I love the rain." "I just got a promotion." Say, "That's awesome." Or, "Congrats." "I forgot my wallet." Say, "Oh no, not again." Or, "That's unlucky." Each time you do this, you're training instant reaction. No translation, no grammar check. That's the muscle we want to build. Step 8. Make English emotional. The more emotion you attach to English, the faster it becomes automatic. Why? Because your brain remembers emotion far better than information. That's why you remember your favorite song lyrics, but not your school grammar book. Connect emotion to language by telling real stories in English, speaking about memories that matter to you, watching movies or shows that make you feel something, writing short reflections about your day, your goals, your feelings. When you feel in English, you stop translating because emotions don't need translation. Step 9. Speak first, fix later. Every time you speak, your brain wants to stop you. Wait, is that right? Did I use the correct tense? Maybe I shouldn't speak. Ignore that voice. Fluency grows from imperfection. Mistakes are part of automatic training. The more you speak without stopping to fix every word, the more confident and natural you'll sound. Grammar will catch up later automatically. Final message for today. Let's be clear. You cannot speak automatically if you keep translating in your head. You can't swim if you never get into the water. From today, stop translating, start feeling, speak small sentences directly in English. Label your world. Think in pictures, not words. React quickly, even if it's not perfect. You're not learning about English anymore, you're living it. And every time you do that, your brain rewires itself a little more. One connection, one reaction, one sentence at a time. In the next segment, we'll go deeper into one of the most powerful tools for automatic fluency: shadowing and mimicry. How copying native speakers trains your mouth, brain, and rhythm to sound natural. Until then, keep speaking and trust your brain. It's smarter than you think. Segment 3: Shadowing and Mimicry. Copy native flow for automatic fluency. Welcome to segment 3 of how to train your mind to speak English automatically. So far, you've learned two major ideas. Fluency happens when your brain speaks without translating. You can train your brain to think in English using image-based thinking, self-talk, and reaction practice. Now it's time to train your mouth, your ears, and your rhythm all at once. In this segment, you'll learn one of the most powerful fluency techniques used by actors, polyglots, and advanced learners all over the world. It's called shadowing. And when you combine it with mimicry, your speaking speed, pronunciation, and confidence will skyrocket. Let's get into it. What is shadowing? Shadowing is simple but powerful. You listen to a native English speaker and immediately repeat what they say, out loud, as closely as possible. Imagine you're standing in their shadow space, speaking just a few seconds behind them. You're not pausing the video, you're not reading subtitles, you're not translating. You're copying their voice live in real time. Why does this work? Because it forces your brain to hear, process, speak all in one smooth motion. This is how you build the real-time reflexes of automatic speaking. You're not just learning the words, you're learning the flow of English. What is mimicry? Mimicry is more focused than shadowing. Instead of repeating immediately, you pause, listen carefully to a sentence or phrase, and then try to copy it exactly with the same tone, speed, rhythm, emotion, stress. This is what actors do when learning an accent. They don't just memorize words, they copy how it's said. Mimicry trains your mouth, muscles, and brain to sound more natural, not like a textbook reader, but like a real person. Shadowing versus mimicry. What's the difference? Shadowing mimicry, repeat instantly, pause, then repeat, no stopping, focused. Copying builds fluency speed, builds pronunciation accuracy, trains real-time speaking, trains emotion, plus voice control. You need both. Shadowing makes you faster, mimicry makes you smoother. Together, they build automatic fluency with real sound. How to start shadowing. Step by step, step 1. Choose the right audio, pick something short, 1-2 minutes, with a native speaker who speaks clearly. Good sources: podcasts, YouTube videos, movie clips, audiobooks, English learning channels with natural speech. Step 2. Listen first, no pressure. Play the clip once. Just listen. Get a feel for the rhythm, emotion, and topic. Step 3. Shadow it live. Now play it again toward the speak with the speaker. Try to stay half a second behind. Repeat exactly what they say, even if you don't understand every word. Don't stop to fix anything. Don't worry about mistakes. Focus on matching their speed, matching their tone, staying in rhythm. Step 4. Repeat. Do this 3 to 5 times with the same clip. Each time, your brain and mouth will sync a little more. You'll feel the flow of English entering your system, not as rules, but as movement, mimicry practice. Step by step. Step 1. Choose one strong phrase. Find one sentence or phrase with emotion. Example: I can't believe you did that. You've got to be kidding me. This is the best thing ever. What are you talking about? Step 2. Listen 3 to 4 times. Pay close attention to how the speaker says it. Where do they pause? Which word gets the stress? What emotion is behind it? Step 3. Record yourself. Say the phrase the same way. Record it. Then compare your version to theirs. Where is the rhythm different? Where is your voice too flat? What can you copy better? This is how actors train, and it's how you will learn to speak like a real person, not a textbook robot. Why this works? Science behind shadowing. When you shadow and mimic, you activate your auditory memory, you engage your motor cortex, speech muscles, you train chunked recall, phrases, not words. You bypass your slow-thinking brain. Instead of building sentences, you're now repeating patterns, naturally, effortlessly, automatically. This is exactly how native speakers learned as kids. They heard thousands of phrases. They copied them again and again. And over time, their brain created automatic fluency. You can do the same. What to shadow? Content. Ideas to stay motivated: choose shadowing content that fits your personality. Daily conversations. Real life English, ordering food, small talk, motivational speeches, great for emotion and tone. Interviews, natural pauses and real phrasing. Movie scenes, great for drama and expression. Storytelling videos, excellent for pacing and flow. Keep your clips short, repeat the same clip over several days. And remember, it's not about understanding every word, it's about copying the sound. Shadowing tips for busy learners. Shadow while walking. Shadow during your commute. Shadow in the shower, shadow while doing chores. Use Bluetooth headphones and your phone. Even 5 minutes of shadowing a day can completely transform your speaking speed. Consistency is the secret. Mimicry. Emotion. Practice. Take one emotion per day. Find 3 to 5 English phrases that match that emotion. Example: excitement. This is amazing. You've got to see this. I love it. Example: anger. I can't believe this. What were you thinking? Don't ever do that again. Say them with real feeling, act, pretend. Train your voice to express emotion in English. This is what makes your speech sound natural, automatic, and alive. The Shadowing Challenge. 7 days to Fluency Boost. Here's a simple plan to follow for the next 7 days. Day 1 2. Shadow 1. Short clip 1-2 minutes. Repeat it 3 to 5 times. Focus on rhythm and speed. Day 3 to 4. Shadow the same clip again. Add mimicry. Pick 3 phrases and copy with emotion. Record and compare. Day 5 to 6. Try a new clip. Use both shadowing and mimicry. Focus on natural stress and flow. Day 7. Pick your favorite phrase. Say it with full expression. Record a short voice memo. Describe your day, tell a story, or react to something using the style you practiced. This challenge builds muscle memory, auditory fluency, and emotional connection to English, all without translation or grammar drills. Final words for today. Shadowing is not about perfection. It's about connection. You're training your brain and mouth to move like English, not to study English. With every repetition, you speak a little faster. With every mimic, you sound a little more real. With every phrase, you get closer to automatic fluency. You don't need more rules. You need more rhythm. You don't need more grammar. You need more voice. In the next segment, we'll explore how daily repetition creates speaking muscle memory and how to turn short sessions into massive fluency gains. Until then, pick one clip, press play, and start speaking. Because fluency isn't something you understand, it's something you feel. Segment 4. Muscle memory of speech. Daily repetition. Builds automatic fluency. Let me ask you something simple. When you tie your shoes, do you think about it? When you write your name, do you spell each letter slowly in your head? When you brush your teeth, do you have to look up a tutorial? No, you just do it. That's muscle memory. And today we're going to talk about how to build muscle memory for English speaking, not memorizing rules, not writing sentences, but training your mouth and brain to speak automatically, just like you tie your shoes or ride a bike. Let's get into it. What is muscle memory in language? Muscle memory is when your body remembers how to do something without conscious thinking. Your mouth, your tongue, your vocal cords, your breathing. All of these are muscles, and just like your arms or legs, you can train them. When you repeat a sentence out loud again and again, your muscles start to remember how to move your tongue for the thea sound, how to pause naturally between ideas, how to connect words smoothly like native speakers. At first it's hard, then it's a little easier, then suddenly it's automatic. That's the goal. The problem with passive learning. Most learners spend too much time reading and listening and not enough time speaking and repeating. Reading teaches your eyes, listening trains your ears, but speaking trains your mouth, and fluency comes from your mouth, not your eyes. If you only consume English but don't produce it out loud, your speaking will always be slow, awkward, and hesitant. The only way to speak automatically is to repeat speaking until it feels normal. That's what builds fluency. How repetition builds fluency. Repetition is not boring. It's powerful. When you say a phrase 10, 20, 30 times, you're doing three things. Training your speech muscles to move easily, telling your brain this phrase matters. Building speed plus confidence through success. The more you repeat, the faster your brain retrieves it. The faster you retrieve it, the more natural you sound. And the more natural you sound, the more confident you become. Short sentences, big impact. Don't try to repeat long, complicated sentences. Start with 4 to 7 word phrases that are common in real life. Examples. I'll be there in 5. Can you help me out? That sounds like a plan. Let me think about it. I don't feel like going. Repeat one of these 20-30 times in a row. Use different tones. Happy, tired, annoyed, excited. Can you help me out? Can you help me out? Can you help me out? You're not just learning a sentence. You're creating muscle memory plus emotional flexibility. Fluency drills. 5 minutes a day. Here's a 5-minute fluency drill you can do every morning or evening. Minute 1. Choose a simple, useful sentence. Minute 2. Say it 10 times at normal speed. Minute 3. Say it with 3 different emotions. Minute 4. Whisper it slowly and clearly. Minute 5. Say it fast and confidently. That's it. In 5 minutes, you've trained pronunciation, intonation, emotion, speed, confidence. And most importantly, Vidosation Siege, you've spoken English out loud with intention. Build a personal sentence bank. Keep a list of 30-50 personal, relevant sentences you use in real life. These become your training base. Examples. I'll get back to you. I'm not sure yet. I'll take care of it. Let's figure this out. That's not what I meant. Every week, pick 3 to 5 of these and repeat them daily. After 30 days, you'll have deep fluency in the sentences you actually use. This is not random vocabulary, it's functional fluency. How to avoid boredom while repeating. If you're thinking, won't this get boring? Here's how to keep it engaging. Say the sentence while walking, use a mirror and make eye contact. Add gestures or facial expressions. Record yourself and compare versions. Play background music and speak over it. Set a timer and turn it into a game. You're not repeating like a robot. You're performing like a speaker. This keeps your brain active and your training fun. Track your progress. See the growth. Repetition can feel invisible, but the bidas results are real. Here's how to measure your growth. Time. How fast you say a sentence now versus 2 weeks ago. Record your voice once a week and listen for improvement. Ask yourself, do I pause less? Do I feel more confident? Look at new conversations. Are you using more phrases automatically? Progress happens slowly, then all at once. Suddenly you'll be in a real conversation and say something naturally. And you'll think, wow, I didn't plan that, it just came out. That's muscle memory. Real English happens in the mouth. Books can teach you grammar, videos can teach you vocabulary, but real English, in natural, automatic, alive, happens in your mouth. Your tongue needs training, your voice needs freedom, your muscles need repetition. If you want to sound like a fluent speaker, then train like one. Final practice plan. The 30-day challenge. Here's a challenge to build muscle memory in 30 days. Pick 5 sentences that feel natural and useful. Repeat each sentence 20 times every day. Say them out loud, with emotion and expression. Record yourself once a week and compare progress. It only takes 10 minutes a day. By the end of the month, those 5 sentences will be part of your speaking system. Fast, easy, automatic. Then you repeat the process with 5 new ones. Month after month, your fluency grows. Closing thought muscle. Memory isn't magic, it's movement, it's sound, it's repetition, it's you deciding every day to speak a little more, a little stronger, a little faster. Fluency doesn't live in your memory, it lives in your mouth. And now, you know how to train it. Mirror talk mindset. How to speak English with confidence, even alone. You're standing in front of the mirror, your reflection looks back, and for the first time, you're not silent. You're speaking English to yourself with emotion, with rhythm, with belief. This is more than a practice technique. This is mirror talk, and it's one of the most powerful fluency tools you can use when you're learning alone. In this bonus segment, we'll explore how mirror talk can build speaking confidence, train real expression, develop natural flow and fluency, and even reduce anxiety and fear around speaking English publicly. No partner, no pressure, no problem. Let's dive in. Why mirror talk works so well. Most learners feel shy when speaking out loud, even to themselves. You may think, this is silly. But here's what really happens when you talk to yourself in the mirror. You see a speaker, not just a learner. You get visual feedback from your own expressions. You begin to treat English as a real identity, not just a subject. Mirror talk connects your voice, your face, and your mind. You're not just speaking words, you're becoming someone who speaks English naturally. The psychology behind mirror practice. There's a scientific reason this works. When you speak in front of a mirror, you become more emotionally aware of your tone and body language. You engage both the visual and auditory sides of your brain. You break the loop of fear around public speaking. You begin to separate your real self from your inner critic. That last one is important. You may have thoughts like, I don't sound good in English. My pronunciation is bad. I'm too slow. But when you look yourself in the eyes and speak anyway, you silence those doubts, one sentence at a time. You're telling your brain, this is who I am now. I speak English. I am not afraid of my voice. That's mindset training and fluency training. Combined, how to start mirror talk, beginner style. If you've never done this before, start simple. Go to the mirror, ideally with good lighting. Look yourself in the eyes. Greet yourself out loud. Say, "Good morning, how are you today? I slept okay, a bit tired, but ready to start. Let's do 5 minutes of English." Speak slowly and clearly. Don't rush. Watch your face. See your emotions. Hear your voice. That's it. Even 2 minutes per day changes how your brain connects to your language identity. Level up. Expressive mirror. Prompts. Once you're comfortable, start expressing full thoughts, not just small talk. Here are some prompts to get started. Tell me something you're proud of. What do you want to improve this week? What's something that stressed you out today? What advice would you give your younger self? What would you do if you were 100% confident? Speak your answers aloud. Use real emotion. Smile, frown, raise your voice, whisper, become a speaker, not a student. The power of your own face. We rarely see ourselves speak, but native speakers do it every day. When you speak in front of a mirror, you learn to pause naturally. You control your facial expression. You practice hand gestures and eye contact. You connect your emotion to your language. This is what makes English feel real, not just practiced. Mirror talk helps you stop thinking, "Am I saying it right?" and start thinking, "Am I saying it like I mean it?" That's the mindset of confidence. Mirror talk as performance training. Think of mirror talk as a performance warm-up. Actors do this, speakers do this, singers do this. Why not you? Before a presentation, interview, or even a Zoom call, try this. Stand in front of the mirror. Speak your introduction 3 times. Hi, my name is, I work as, I'm happy to be here. Make eye contact with yourself. Adjust your tone and posture. Notice how you carry confidence with your voice. Do this before speaking English in public, and you'll feel ready, calm, and prepared. Practice routine. The 7-minute mirror loop. Want a daily routine? Try this. Minute 1. Greet yourself and check in. Minute 2. Describe your mood or how you slept. Minute 3. Talk about your plans for the day. Minute 4. Give your opinion on something small, news, music, food. Minute 5. React to an imaginary situation. Someone asked you a question. Minute 6. Motivate yourself with a positive message. Minute 7. Say goodbye and review one key phrase 5 times simple. Powerful, transformational. You don't need a course. You don't need a teacher. You just need a mirror and 7 minutes. How to stay consistent. Here's how to make mirror talk a habit. Set a timer. Same time every day, after brushing teeth, before bed, etc. Keep a notebook nearby to track your favorite phrases. Record your voice once a week for reflection. Choose a focus each day: pronunciation, emotion, tone, pace. Celebrate tiny wins. Spoke more confidently today. That's progress. The more consistent you are, the more automatic your English becomes, from self-doubt to self-belief. You might feel silly at first. That's okay. You might feel uncomfortable hearing your own voice. That's normal. But one day, say maybe soon, you'll be standing in front of that mirror, and instead of hearing hesitation, you'll hear clarity. Instead of doubt, you'll feel confidence. Instead of saying I'm trying to speak English, you'll say I do speak English. And that voice, that confident, flowing, natural voice, that's you. Final thought. Mirror talk isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about showing up for your language every day, face to face. Because the more you see yourself as a speaker, the more you become one. No partner, no problem. Your reflection is your first audience, and your voice is ready to be heard, even by just one person, you. So go to the mirror, speak your truth, train your voice, and watch your fluency grow from the inside out. Segment 5, Internal Conversation. Loops, how to speak English alone. Let's start with a question. What if you had no one to practice English with ever? No language partner, no teacher, no conversation class. Would you still be able to train your brain to speak English fluently? The answer is yes. In fact, many of the most fluent English learners in the world practiced alone every day with no one to talk to. And today I'll show you how to do the same. In this session, you'll learn how to create internal conversation loops, powerful daily speaking exercises that simulate real conversation using just your own voice. We'll go deep into mirror talk, voice journaling, role play, and Q&A loops. How to build confidence by speaking aloud, even when no one's listening. Let's begin. Why speaking alone? Works. Most people believe fluency comes from conversation with others, and yes, real conversation helps, but what builds fluency faster is repetition. And that's something you can control by yourself. When you speak alone, there's no judgment, there's no pressure. You can go at your own pace, you can repeat, improve, explore. You don't have to wait for a speaking partner, you don't have to worry about making mistakes. You can train fluency on demand, right now. Speaking alone is not fake practice, it's real training for your mouth, your brain, your memory, and your confidence. Technique 1. Mirror talk, the power of face-to-face with yourself. Stand in front of a mirror, look yourself in the eyes, start talking in English. Say, "Hi, how are you today? You look tired. What's your plan for the day? Did you sleep well? Tell me what you're thinking right now." Yes, you're talking to yourself, Nad. And that's the point. You're activating your speaking reflex in a personal, emotional, natural way. Use your hands. Use your face. Be expressive. Act like you're in a real conversation. The mirror gives you feedback. You'll see your confidence grow. You'll start to believe, I can actually speak English. Start with 2 minutes a day, then build to 5, then 10. This daily habit rewires your brain to speak out loud, not just silently in your head. Technique 2. Voice journaling. Think in English, speak your day. Every day, take 5 minutes to record yourself speaking about what happened today, what you're feeling, what you're planning, what you're worried about, what you're grateful for. Just talk, freely, naturally. Today was a busy day. I woke up late. I didn't feel like working, but I had to get things done. I'm feeling a little anxious about next week. There's an interview coming up. Don't worry about grammar. Don't stop. Keep the words flowing. This trains free speech, the kind you use in real life. Over time, you'll start noticing you pause less. You self-correct in real time. You sound more natural. Your thoughts come in English first. It's like a gym for your speaking muscles. Technique 3. Role play. Speak both sides of the conversation. Imagine a conversation and act out both people. Yes, both. You can do this with customer service calls, job interviews, coffee shop orders, small talk with a friend, meeting someone new. Here's an example. You, customer. Hi, I'd like to return this item. You, staff. Sure, can I see your receipt? You, customer. Yes, here it is. It doesn't fit properly. You, staff. No problem. Would you like to exchange it or get a refund? Now switch topics. You can even imagine accents, personalities, or emotions. This builds flexibility and real-time speaking flow. You're not just speaking, you're responding. That's fluency. Technique 4. Q&A loops. Train real-world reactions. Grab a notebook or use a question list. Ask yourself questions and answer immediately without stopping to think. Examples. What's your favorite movie? What do you do when you're stressed? Describe your best friend. If you had 1 extra hour every day, what would you do? Speak freely. Time yourself. Challenge yourself to answer quickly. 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute. This is real fluency training. It builds automatic reaction time. And when someone does ask you that question in real life, you'll already have the answer because you practiced it. Tip: record and listen back. Optional but powerful. Once a week, record one of your sessions. Mirror talk, journal, or role play. Then listen to it a few days later. You'll hear what you're good at, what's improving, what words you repeat, where you still hesitate. It's not about judging, it's about noticing. Self-awareness is how you get better, faster. What if you're too shy to speak aloud? Start small. Whisper. Instead of speaking normally, speak only one sentence at a time. Use just 2 minutes a day. Lock the door or go for a walk while talking. Over time, you'll get comfortable, and soon you'll want to talk, because it feels powerful to express yourself in English. Fluency builds confidence, but confidence also builds fluency. The mindset shift. You don't need permission to speak English. You don't need a teacher, you don't need a class, you don't need a native speaker. All you need is your voice and a decision. The decision to speak every day, even if no one listens. Because every time you speak aloud, you activate your fluency reflex, you train your mouth and brain together, you prove to yourself that you can speak English. This is how fluency becomes automatic, not someday, but now. A simple daily routine to practice. Speaking alone. Here's a system you can follow in just 10 minutes a day. Minute 1 to 2, mirror talk, greet yourself, ask how you feel. Minute 3 to 4, voice journal. Say what happened today. Minute 5 to 6, role play a short situation. Minute 7 to 8, ask and answer, 2 quick questions. Minute 9 to 10, repeat one phrase 10 times with emotion. That's it. No grammar books, no long study sessions, just real English, practiced with your voice. Final words for today. The most fluent people in the world didn't wait for someone to speak with. They started speaking to themselves and never stopped. You don't need permission, you don't need perfection, you need consistency. When you speak English out loud, you are rewiring your brain. Sentence by sentence, day by day. You are becoming someone who doesn't wait to speak English. You speak it now. In the next and final segment, you'll learn how to build your own daily fluency system, a simple plan to keep you speaking automatically, confidently, and consistently every single day. Until then, keep talking, even if you're the only one listening, because that's how fluency is built. Segment 6. Your daily fluency system. Make English a part of who you are. You've come a long way. In this course, you've discovered how fluency is built, not from memorizing grammar rules or passing tests, but from training your brain and voice to work together automatically. You've learned to stop translating in your head, speak English with emotion and confidence. Shadow native speakers mimic tone, rhythm, and real-life speech. Talk to yourself with purpose every day. Now it's time to put it all together. In this final session, I'll help you create your daily fluency system, a simple, sustainable practice routine that fits your life, builds confidence, and turns English into something more than a skill. It becomes a part of who you are. Let's begin. Why you need a system. Fluency doesn't come from what you do once. It comes from what you do every day. Your goal is not to study harder. Your goal is to create a repeatable routine that strengthens your fluency muscles. One sentence, one session, one habit at a time. The perfect fluency system is simple, flexible, consistent, motivating. Let's build yours right now. The 5 core elements of a fluency routine. To speak English automatically, Your daily routine should include these 5 elements. 1. Input. Listen to real English. Choose something you enjoy, a podcast, a video, a short story. Don't worry about understanding everything. Focus on the rhythm, the tone, the feeling. Time 5 to 10 minutes. 2. Shadowing. Repeat with the speaker. Play a short clip and follow along, half a second behind. Match the voice. Copy the stress. Stay with the flow. Time 5 minutes. 3. Mimicry practice. One phrase. Many times pick a powerful sentence, repeat it with emotion, change your tone, experiment. Train your voice like a singer trains a song. Time 2 minutes. 4. Solo speaking. Speak about your day, use mirror talk, voice journaling or daily Q&A. Talk freely, make mistakes, keep going. Time 5 to 10 minutes. 5. Quick reaction. Respond fast to simple prompts. Answer real-life questions out loud. Don't prepare, just react. What's the weather like today? What are you looking forward to this week? What's something you learned recently? Time 3 minutes. Sample. Daily routine 15-20 minutes. Here's how it could look. Watch or listen to a 3-minute native speaker clip. Shadow that clip. 2 times mimic one key sentence with emotion. Talk aloud about your day for 5 minutes. Answer 2 quick questions out loud. That's it. No grammar books, no translation. Just real English, spoken, felt, repeated. Consistency beats perfection. 3. Golden rules to keep you going. Speak more than you study. Your mouth needs more training than your mind. Feel more than you fear. Don't aim for perfect English. Aim for expressive English. Repeat more than you plan. Don't wait for the perfect time. Do a little every day. Fluency is not about knowing, it's about doing. You don't need motivation. You need momentum. You may think, but what if I don't feel motivated tomorrow? That's okay. Motivation comes and goes. What you really need is momentum. A system keeps you going when motivation disappears. 1 day becomes 2, 2 becomes a week becomes a habit, and then, without realizing it, you'll hear yourself say something in English automatically, and you'll pause and think, did I just say that without thinking? Yes. Yes, you did, because you trained for it. Who are you becoming? You're no longer a student of English. You're a speaker of English, a communicator, a storyteller, a thinker, in English. You've stopped waiting for permission. You've stopped waiting to feel ready. You've taken the first steps into real fluency. Fluency that lives in your voice, in your identity, in your daily life. Your voice has power. Maybe no one heard you speak today, but you did. And that matters, because every time you speak English aloud, and even when no one is around, and your confidence grows. Your voice strengthens. Your fluency becomes real. You're not practicing English. You're living it. What happens next? You don't need more information. You don't need more lessons. You need one thing: repetition. Repeat what works. Repeat what feels right. Repeat until it's automatic. That's how your brain learns. That's how your mouth remembers. That's how fluency becomes effortless. Closing message. If no one has told you this yet, I will. You are capable of fluency. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are exactly where you need to be. Starting, trying, speaking, improving. Don't compare your English to anyone else's. Compare your voice today to your voice last month. That's your progress. That's your power. Final call to action. If this training helped you, and if you believe your English deserves your voice, then take one step. Like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to stay on this journey together. Every week, we'll share more ways to build fluency. Without pressure, without fear, and without grammar drills. We'll build it with practice, emotion, and your voice. Thank you for listening. Thank you for speaking. And remember, You don't need perfect English, you need real English, and you already have it inside you. Speak it, live it, own it,